I'm James Reeves, and I am a PhD researcher here at the University of Wolverhampton, and Nicola is one of my supervisors. And this ties into what my PhD research is. I am analyzing the works of Dolly Parton and through the lens of feminist theory. So I'm looking at women in the works of Dolly Parton. So today we're going to remove all preconceived ideas that we have about song lyrics and songs, and we're actually going to analyze them as stories. So to me, at the heart of my PhD research, I look at songs as stories. And so hopefully after this course, after this module today, you'll go away from this class and start thinking of songs as stories. So how many English students do we have in here? So what do we do when we analyze a story? We look at the characters, we look at the themes, we look at the plots, we look at the merits and the morals and the lessons of the story. Well, I want us to do the same thing with song lyrics. So that's why I've given you 5 different stories to analyze. So instead of looking at these songs as songs, I want us to look at them as stories. And we're going to analyze that. I'll analyze them as stories. So we're going to talk about the history of songwriting as storytelling. Okay, so everybody would follow along with me. Music, just like any other facets of culture, such as literature, religion, history, myths, legends, and art, all have one thing in common: storytelling. Since time began, humans have told stories about their experiences of being humans. These stories survived because they were told through rhyme and song. Back before the written word, oral storytelling became a very central element in the life of humans. Stories and songs were our way of not only entertaining, but a way in which to record how it felt to be human. So since the dawn of time, songs were never just simply songs to our ancestors, to the early humans. They were the way in which to tell about our experiences as humans, our relationships with one another, our relationships with the world, our relationships with nature. But also, think about how the world was in the early stages of human evolution. It was harsh, it was untamed. Life wasn't always positive. So songs and stories were humans' ways of really talking about how it felt to be human and the experiences that we shared with one another. Are there any questions or comments or agreements or disagreements about that? Since time began, humans have used oral stories to teach lessons and morals and record the experiences of being human. Early stories such as the Descent of Inanna and the Epic of Gilgamesh rhymed, as it made it easier to remember. Now, I've taught both the Descent of Inanna and the Epic of Gilgamesh. And even though they're considered poems, they're really songs because they rhyme. There's a rhythm to it. And this slide sort of tells us, but why do you think our early ancestors, when they were writing these poems and these epics and these stories, why do you think they had these stories rhyme? It's a very simple answer, and it's clear as day when we think about it. Why do you think they would construct these stories and these epics to rhyme?
Because you can pass on that message a lot easier. You can bring it to different parts of the world. Exactly,
and because it was easier to remember. So the Descent of Inanna was passed down thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It rhymed because it made it easier to remember. And this really was the birth of the song. So actually, music has its heart in storytelling. Storytelling and story songs were really the very first ideas that we as humans had of a song. While it seems simplistic, this was the beginning of songwriting and the connection between music and stories. These early stories could have at times been set to music. Thus, the story song was born. And the descent of Inanna, of course, is the oldest recorded story in history. And when you read the descent of Inanna, it's an epic poem. It rhymes, as it made it easier to remember. And then it could at times have been set to music. Storytelling and songwriting helped us evolve and grow as human beings, as we were able to recount experiences both real and imaginary through song and story. Early stories and songs, though filled with fantastical elements, recounted the harsh existence of humans in a wild, untamed environment. So as I said earlier, our early ancestors lived in a very, very brutal world where for every child born, a child died. I mean, this is the harsh elements. We didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have houses, etc. So stories, even though sometimes they're mystical and fantastical, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Descent of Inanna, they really recount how it felt to be human in the early stages of human development. They have fantastical elements, but underneath those fantastical elements really was a story about our experiences as human beings and also our experiences with one another. Storytelling and songwriting, in essence, were our early ancestors' way of passing down history orally. At the very heart of early songs and stories are the experiences of early humans and their place in the world. So here's a cave painting dated as early as 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. And why to us it may look like graffiti, it was telling the story. It was telling the story. And songs, really the birth of music came from storytelling. It was our way of passing down stories, lessons, morals, but also really passing down how it meant and how it felt to be human in early civilization. So I want you to remember that when we analyze the pieces of works that we're going to be analyzing. Stories cannot be confined to just written word. Think about multimedia forms of entertainment. Stories can be told through what kind of ways? What are different ways to tell stories besides just the written word? There's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. There's a plethora of answers. What are different ways to tell stories besides just written word?
Through a play.
Through a play, through performance. Film. There's, you can tell a story. I took a module in my first master's degree with multimedia storytelling, which we told stories through tweets. I mean, what other types of ways are there to tell stories? Yeah. Dance, performance. Music is another way in which we can tell stories. So a story is not confined to a book. It's not confined to a piece of paper. There are different ways in which humans are able to tell stories. And music is just one of those ways in which we can tell a story. Stories can be told through music, which is the basis of a song. The whole basis of a song should be a story. It should be telling a story. And just like we're reading a novel or watching a film, we should be able to analyze what the plot is, what the theme is, what the lesson is, who the characters are, what is the climax of the story. A song should be just as well written as our favorite novel or our favorite film. So listen to a song. Listen to a song. What story is it telling? What is the lesson? What did the writer intend for us as listeners to learn? If a song has no message, then what does that tell us about how we have lost the ability to tell stories? Or simply, are some modern songs not stories at all, and instead just simply products meant for consumption? If we as humans lose our ability to tell stories, are we then losing our humanity and the gift of storytelling that helped us as a species to evolve, thrive, and survive? Before I really got into reading I felt obligated to finish a story. If I started a book, I felt obligated to finish it. But nowadays, I'm like, if this book is not well written, and you can tell that this book was just meant for publishing, just to make money, I put it down. Because to me, at the heart of a true story is a lesson and a moral, characters, a climax, a theme, something for us to learn. So I really want you to think about that the next time you listen to a song. Does it have a message? What is the message? Who are the characters? And if it's well written, it should have those elements. And if it doesn't have any of that, there's no theme or moral or lesson, then what does that tell us not only about the direction that music is headed, but also us as human beings? What does that tell us about our humanity? Have we, as humans, lost our ability to tell stories? Throughout our history as human beings, music, storytelling, and songwriting has been the human race's way of telling stories of our real life and experiences. Like any story, there are characters, themes, lessons, morals, and most importantly, it not only appeals to our sight, but our hearing. Songs are stories that relate to us how it feels to be human. Songs shouldn't be a commercial product meant for simple consumption, but rather a snapshot of the time, place, and storyteller who wrote it. So for instance, when I taught The Descent of Inanna in university, I told students, for every story that we read, I don't want you to think about it as ink on paper. It truly is a snapshot of who wrote it, the time, the place, the person who wrote its struggles, their hopes, their dreams. So just like works of fiction, just like poems, just like movies and entertainment, etc., songs should be equally as important as stories. A song really is like a picture of the decade it was written, about the hopes and dreams of the person who wrote it, about the person who wrote its experiences and the things that they were going through. So that's what I want you to take away from this lesson. The next time you listen to a song or read song lyrics, analyze what the story is. What's the story? What's going on? It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. There should be a climax. The story should be clear if it's a well-written song. Who are the characters? Who are the characters in the stories? Are they male? Are they female? Are they poor? Are they rich? Where does it take place? What are they going through? Etc. What is the lesson? What is the lesson or moral of the story? And how does it relate to our experiences as complex beings? So through my research with looking at women in the works of Dolly Parton, I sort of create and paint a picture of what it means to be a Southern woman in the United States. Most of Dolly Parton's films, her stories, her songs are about the experiences of Southern women in the United States. They're not necessarily about women in New York or California or women in England, because Dolly Parton draws from her own experiences and the experiences of women as she knows in the South. So when I look at her works or I look at her filmography, even the film roles that she plays, they're all about Southern women and how it meant to be a very distinct type of person in the Southern states of America. I'm from the Southern states of America. I'm from Georgia. So I know the experiences of the women who raised me and the experiences of Southern women that were around me. And Dolly Parton's songs and Dolly Parton's film roles, even when she was in the film 9 to 5, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Straight Talk, they're all about Southern women and what it meant to be a Southern woman in a not-so-Southern world. So today, when we look at these song lyrics, despite if you know who wrote them or who you don't know who wrote them, I want you to remove all preconceived ideas of these songs, who wrote them, etc. Because I want to look at the lyrics as stories first and foremost. I want us to be able to analyze what we think the lessons and the morals of these stories are. Okay, so this is the next part of this lesson, which I'm very, very much looking forward to. And this is when we're going to be looking at lyrics as stories. So I want us to pretend that these music lyrics are not music lyrics. I want us to analyze the characters, the plots, the themes, what you think the moral and the lesson is. And if you do know who wrote the song and you do know who originally sang it, please keep it to yourself. I don't want us to sort of have any preconceived ideas or notions or judgments based on who wrote it. Because I don't necessarily think it's, as someone who looks at songs, yes, it's important to know who wrote it, and it's important to sort of connect that with the artist. But I don't think it's relevant at this particular moment. I think let's look at these stories, these lyrics as stories. And then we can talk about the backstory, etc. So the very first story that we're going to read, I'm not going to say song, the very first story that we're going to read is called The Bridge. And I would like for everybody to some point to be able to read, if you feel comfortable to do that out loud, because then we can all follow along. But what I do is I teach lyrics as stories. So I'm going to ask you, what do you make of that? What do you feel from that particular line? So the very first story that we're going to read is called The Bridge. Do we have any volunteers to read, for instance, the first stanza? Okay, and if you please read it loud and clear for everyone to hear, and we can follow along. So does everyone have the copy of The Bridge? All right.
The bridge so high, the bridge so tall, here's where it started, on the bridge. The moon is big and yellow, and the stars are all aglow. From the bridge, I see reflections in the waters far below.
So what do you make from that part? What do you make from that stanza? I mean, this particular author really paints a picture for us, correct? So let's analyze this story first. Just from this opening part of the story, where are we? What do we see? Where are we? Yes.
There's a bridge.
Well, sorry. Sorry.
It's nighttime because it's the moon. And there's obviously the bridge is some sort of body of water underneath it.
Yeah, so we're sitting on a bridge, and it's high and it's tall and it's at nighttime, and the narrator of this story is looking down at the water. So we already know sort of the feeling that we get from the beginning of this story. Okay, who would like to continue?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
He kissed me for the first time here and held me awfully tight, and the bridge became my favourite place. We came here often in the night.
So this author, what is she's speaking to someone. He or she is speaking to someone, correct? And what is the author, the storyteller, telling us thus far about why this bridge is significant to them? That's where they fell in love. That's where this particular author fell in love. Okay, Fabian?
What?
I'm going to do what I do in America. I'm going to call on my students. All right, Fabian?
For the next stanza?
Yes.
Okay. And one night was standing on the bridge, desire swept through us both, passion took us by the hand and showed us where to go.
So it's getting a little bit steamy, right? So one night on the bridge, the author with this other person, they held hands, and then what happened?
They held a little something more.
Pardon?
They held a little something more.
They did what?
They held a little something more.
Desire swept through them. Right. So it's quite beautiful, right? That this bridge represents where this person fell in love with this other person and where they consummated their love. They consummated their love. All right. Who would like to go next?
I'll read the next.
Thank you. From the bridge.
Yeah, sorry. Remember which one it was. From the bridge we saw a meadow, so we ran together there. Where we found love together, our emotions filled the air.
So what do you think about that? This bridge is more than just a physical place to this person telling the story. It represents what to them? What does it represent? This place represents to this I mean, it's a feeling of love. It's where they first fell in love. It's where they first consummated. So sometimes places become what to people, to us? It becomes more than just, brick and mortar or wood, etc. What does it become to us? It becomes a symbol of what happened to us there. Okay? The bridge so wide, the bridge so long, where once we stood together, tonight I stand alone. So the mood has shifted in this story. So this place that once represented love and consummation of love to this author now represents what? Pardon, Ethan? Loneliness, despair. So Ethan, would you like to read the next line? Tonight while standing on the bridge.
Tonight while standing on the bridge, my heart is beating wild to think that you could leave me here without a unborn child.
So now we're starting to, this storyteller is really painting a picture for us. So this bridge first started off as a place that they fell in love. We know it's a she, fell in love, was where they first consummated their love. Then they're alone, but they're really not alone on the bridge because who's with them?
The baby.
This author of this story, this character in this story, so we know the character is an unwed mother. And she's not alone. She's on the bridge with her unborn child. And what is she saying, basically speaking to this person that's not there, this man that's left her? What is she basically saying? This bridge used to be a place that we fell in love. It was a place we consummated our love. But now, what is she saying about? She says, to think you could leave me here with our unborn child. So where is she at right now?
All right, I've got to guess.
Don't guess about.
And then it's about the
Okay.
thing. So what I think she's saying, I don't think she's speaking necessarily to herself.
Maybe her child?
That's what I think she's saying. I think whoever it is must have passed away or something, and she's talking to them. That's what I think.
Possibly. So there's many different interpretations of what it means to be left alone. But we'll figure that out as the story progresses. So now we basically know what's happening in the story, correct? Would you like to continue? My feet
are moving slowly closer to the edge. Here is where it started, and here is where I'll end it.
And that's it. That's the story. Even though this is a super, super short story, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the character, of course, is this unwed mother, this person that's been left. And what happens to her? In the beginning, where does she go in the beginning of the story?
So she goes to the bridge to become and it's this really happy memory, but obviously when she gets abandoned, it turns into something quite sour. And it's well, if you're gonna leave me, then it's there's no point having this happy memory of it anymore. It's kind of trying to get back at them. So it's if they had whoever's left her, if they ever go back to that bridge, it's they're gonna have a sour memory now because she's planning on ending it there instead.
And this place can become more than just places. They can become things that represent a certain particular time in my life, or a person's life. So to this particular young woman, this, like you said, this is a beautiful place, but also it's a place of despair. And it's sort of the way that this story is written, it has an ending. And it hits you in the face. And there's nothing left for interpretation. We know what happens. She has an unborn child, and then she's speaking to this elusive person that's absent. What is she saying? My feet are moving slowly closer to the edge. Here's where it started, and here's where I'll end it. Where I'll end it. Where's she saying then? Basically, what is this character going to do?
Kill herself.
And her baby. She's like, this is where it started, our love. But I'm going to be the one to finish it. So regardless if it's a wrong thing that this person's doing, what do you think by that line, here's where it started, and here's where I'll end it? is this person necessarily taking their power back, regardless if we agree with their actions and their choices or not? But what do you make of that final line of the story?
I guess it's kind of like they're wanting like the last action to be theirs. So it's like obviously this love started there, and then she was abandoned by whoever this person is, and it's like, well, you know, you can leave me, but you're not having like the last laugh, kind of.
And that's a kind of a feminist interpretation if you think about it. I mean, regardless if we agree with this character's, regardless if we agree with this character's choices, I mean, there is some power in, I guess, choosing for yourself sort of thing. But why do you think this character has resorted to this? I mean, we don't know if this person's physically off the plane of existence or this person willingly left her. But why do you think that the character sees that this is the only option for her to end it?
Maybe it's to do with the abortion limitations.
It could be. That's something that I didn't even think about. I mean, that it could be about abortion limitations. What else? I mean, we don't know the particular time and place. Maybe it's when women who were unwed and pregnant were treated as second-class citizens, regardless if a man, you know, men can get away scotch-free, but women are the ones that are, if they're left with an unborn child, sometimes what happens, especially in certain areas in the world, even now or in the past, where women were left unwed and pregnant. I mean, what options did they have? How do you think this young woman would have been treated? I mean, to resort to this sort of thing. But there is, I get what you're saying, there is a little bit of a revenge aspect there, being like, you know, our love started here, but this is where I'm going to end it. What is she ending? There's so many different interpretations of what you think she's ending. What is she ending?
I mean, it could be her life, it could be that she's just going there and throwing like all of his stuff off the bridge, and like it's a like symbolic thing of like, this is where our love started, so I'm going to take everything that we did have.
So it may not necessarily be her and her child.
Yeah, it could literally just be like, because obviously when you go through a breakup, sometimes you'll take everything and like burn it or something. So, but that could just be being paid. But like,
Oh, one second.
yeah.
What, Fabian?
Yeah, and besides that, I think it summarizes the two parts of the story. So we have this love and this breakup or thing. So the two parts, and the last two lines are, this is where it started, this is where it ends,
And this unborn baby, though, the stakes are a bit higher in terms of just somebody throwing themselves off a bridge or stuff. Why do you think it was? Somebody read the line with the unborn child when she says, where is it at?
To think that you could leave me here with our unborn child.
To think that you could leave me here. So in my interpretation of reading the story, I don't think it was something that this person was taken from her unwillingly. To me personally, this is just my interpretation, this person willingly left her with a child that's unborn. But do you think the way that this narrator is talking to this person who left her knew she had an unborn child? I mean, it's open, just like movies and text and stories, it's all open to interpretation. So what I'm taking from this is going to be something that it's completely different that you're taking from it. What do you think?
I guess like it could be seen as like, I mean, I feel like if you read it just straight off, like, without like deeping it too much, like you would just think that they were aware of the situation. But then you could also think of maybe this person has passed away, and it's being angry at the fact that they're gone instead of like angry at that person. So like,
Because the grief process is so complicated.
yeah, there is a lot of different options that this could be, realistically.
I quite like the fact that it's quite schmaltzy, isn't it? So and it's actually quite it's full of archetypes, or one might even go so far as to suggest it's a bit naff. It mentions the bridge quite a lot. You have the moon, which, you know, you always have the moon. You've got the stars, you always have the stars. It's actually really recognisably quite a schmaltzy romantic setting. And then, because I am emotionally dead, So what I noticed
We
is
love truth.
you've got this kind of this schmaltzy setting.
Valentine's Day
all of-
card.
Yeah. But then what happens is that it sort of turns on you, doesn't it? Because it kind of goes, actually, this is a suicide song, not a love song.
What if it's a suicide note?
In some ways, that's kind of interesting, I think, because it's sort of it's doing things, playing with form. It's a little bit like Shakespeare does this. When he does his let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. And then he kind of goes, love is not love which alters when it alteration finds. So he does this whole poem, and it's basically kind of, sort of, kind of going, well, I still love you, but you don't love me. And it looks like a love poem. And people often have it read out at their weddings and stuff. But actually, it's really, really quite bitter. And what he does with the form is he kind of turns it on itself.
Like, how can I count the ways? It's actually not a love poem. It's actually like,
I'm a great poet. Yeah.
right. And it's also like, I guess I'm stuck with you, so I guess I love you, sort of thing.
There's there's like a formal kind of playfulness in a way.
But then it hits you with horror.
Yeah, this is doing something, that's actually quite similar to what Shakespeare did.
So again, sonnets, poems, etc. So we have a story. We have a full story, a very short story. What do we take from it? What do you take? I take dread from it, but also take sympathy from it. But you can almost sense this person's anger, this person's dread, etc. But what do you think about this? What do you take from it? Over there in the back.
Take that she's just killing herself, and she started out all lovey-dovey and then drastically turned when it hit the refrain for a second time.
What do y'all feel from it though? How does this story make you feel?
Doesn't necessarily make me feel any type of way.
How did you like it? Did you find it depressing? Did you find it pretty well constructed? Just like every story or poem that we read, I want you to talk about your feelings. How did it make you feel?
I think it's a dawning horror in it, isn't it? Horror might be
Like gothic.
or sadness. Do you know what I mean? Because it kind of, I completely agree with what Nick was saying about it. It's engaging with the cliches, but undercutting them. But I suppose with another cliche. Do you know what I mean? The trope of the fallen woman.
No pun intended. Fallen
Yeah,
woman.
literally. Has been with us a long time.
What else do we take from this story before we analyze a lot? Yeah.
I think you can sense a lot of desperation from it, like with any possibility like this, kind of how it's ending, it is a desperation of some sort. And I feel like you do feel like a bit of sympathy as well to the situation, because being left in any aspect with like an unborn child, whether it's found or not, like it's not an easy thing.
And think about, this is kind of relevant to today in certain places when you think about it. I didn't look at the abortion access sort of aspect of it, but I mean, we can sense sort of like desperation in this person. But if we look at this instead of like a song or a story, what about a note that this person's leaving another person? I mean, this person is directly speaking to someone. It's like, this is when we first met, but how dare you leave me with our unborn child? This is where it all started, but this is where I'm going to end it. So, this is written by Dolly Parton. As sunny of a disposition as Dolly Parton has, this was written in the 1970s or 1960s when Dolly Parton was first started. So that's why I wanted to remove preconceived ideas from what you had about her, because for those who do know Dolly Parton, she's known as being what? Like glamorous, and what else?
Like quite a big character.
Big, larger than life, sunny disposition. Now that looking at this, I mean, does it almost, and it was completely written by Dolly Parton, do you see it differently now that I told you who wrote it? Or do you still see the merits of the song and as a story that, sometimes we can connect to darker parts of ourselves regardless if we are sunny on the outside? Are you surprised who wrote this? For those who